Welcome to the Stretch2Go Podcast. My name is Ian Ray, your host. Today I have Chris Duffin, co-owner of Bearfoot Shoes, based out in Fargo, North Dakota. Chris, welcome to the Stretch2Go Podcast.
Yeah, thanks for having me, man. I'm looking forward to talking all things foot and minimalist shoes today, right?
Yes, sir. I love to find out, first of all, I always give this question to people, but it's where did the name literal Barefoot shoe come from as far as the brand itself and the name?
Oh, man, actually, let me grab my book behind. I had this really strange upbringing. It's in this, it was a bestseller, The Eagle and the Dragon. I grew up like homeless in the wilderness. So, imagine some kid running around without shoes in the Northern California wilderness being chased by bears. That's me. Yes, that happened. And so I've been a strength athlete for a long time. And I was one of the, I guess the best at my period of time. And, I had some all-time world records, and I think there's a Guinness world record behind me, which I did without shoes on, by the way. And yeah, I did a lot of my training without shoes because I was doing this deep dive on. Anyway, so back to the name. I was doing tons of education around footwear and footwork, and I had a couple gentlemen approach me about doing a deadlift sock. And I said, hey, that's cool and all, but the big gap here is footwear. Like there's a big miss. There was hardly any brands in the space at the time, and no one was focused on our market. But, barbells, the gym, like that environment was not, it was all for, hippies and runners. And that's not a negative towards hippies. I live in Portland, Oregon. That's my friends, right? But it's just the reality of like, that's where the market, focus was, right? And I'm like, this is where we need to go. And so it was like this name, kind of pulling off of my background and upbringing made a lot of sense. So it's Bear as in Bear. Now there is this knockoff competitor that put an E after the Bear, which is annoying as heck. Because they're stealing tons of traffic, but and it's just some cheap China knockoff water shoes. But anyway, that's where the name came from.
Okay, got it. So tell me, so you literally grew up in the wilderness, like being out there and being out like barefoot, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So I grew up in Hawaii.
Not all the time barefoot, but it was fairly common. Like that. That's just the environment that I grew up in. Like, I mean, it's. Like there was periods of time where I was living in a tree fort, maybe a back of a truck, those sorts of things. And it was different. I remember running around and like just on gravel and things. And then later in life, I'm like, this is like without shoes, like my feet are super sensitive. And I went kind of finding back where I was because I ended up going in the corporate world. And so I was a corporate turnaround exec for a long time. So you can imagine me with, all dressed up and I called them my fancy pants and my dress shoes and standing on concrete all day. And I'm trying to compete as an athlete. And I started running into all these injuries, and that sent me on this path of doing clinical continuing education. So I went on this deep dive of developmental kinesiology, neurology, ended up doing this stuff for like 10 years. So made a lot of good friends. I was lecturing alongside Dr. Craig Liebenson, Dr. Stu McGill, like all these, really great figures and innovators. And in that's like where I developed my methodology and approach, which was number one priority, if I look at things at a global system, is ability to control and manage the spine or torso. And number two behind that is then the foot and ankle complex. And then we can get into the prime movers after that, like the hip complex and the shoulder complex. And then you get out into the peripheral, right? And if you look at things in that manner, you can usually resolve issues a lot sooner than people think. You get focused on this elbow, hand, whatever problem. It's like, let's get back to basics. Are we doing this? Number one, doing that. Number two. And this is where I started just training without shoes, and my foot started getting stronger. My ability to control that complex, just taking care of those things, took care of all these things between there. And my strength started skyrocketing. Not really my strength, my ability to express strength started skyrocketing. So like raw strength didn't get that much better, but I was able, like my squat went up 150 pounds. My deadlift just like these numbers started going through the roof as I was able to train better and longer without injury. And my feet started getting jacked too, by the way. I got some strong feet, but that started happening. And then I'm like, shoes don't fit me anymore either. So I'm running into that problem just because it's like your foot starts like changing shape, and you realize again, like how much just as my adult life, the changes that footwear had brought on me. So yeah, that was my path. I was doing, education on foot mechanics for probably 5-6 years.
Mm-hmm.
Where people would come and say, hey, well, I have to wear shoes at my gym. What do I wear? And I'm like, I can't really recommend anything. Like, I don't really like any of them out there. They don't have the qualities that I want. A lot of the minimalist shoes at the time still had like too narrow of a toe box, or they still limited. I would say I'd call it the torsional plane, but as a clinical background, that doesn't really exist. But it's you've got different frequencies that the two arches of foot operate on because of the links, and essentially it creates a rotation of the foot and the ability to really drive that large toe down, or the space between the large toe. The ability to do that with a lot of the shoes, even minimalist shoes, was still like limited. It was, they're really good at rolling up one direction, but the ability that you needed to do that to engage as a ground force based athlete was still kind of limited.
Yeah, that's interesting because I don't have a powerlifting background, fitness, but like I've been working with powerlifters strictly at their events, and I notice when I do, a lot of them aren't. I mean, I've probably found a few who are wearing quote unquote, zero drop wide toe box shoes, but a lot of them were still wearing your, typical weightlifting shoe where they have an elevated heel and whatnot. But in your background and in your perspective, how beneficial can these powerlifters benefit with wearing shoes such as Barefoot shoes, and especially for overall?
Yeah. So there is still like some microcosms of, culture within any sport, right? So it sounds like you're probably in one of the areas that has probably a large like USAPL, or I can't remember which, but they'll use a lot of those lifter type shoes where you go elsewhere and you'll find that it's everyone with some sort of minimalist shoe now. And just that whole presence of like people wearing minimalist shoes in the gym or no shoes, it came about from a lot of that education that I was producing about 10 years ago that created that shift, because it was, very predominantly lifters across the board. But if you look at most of the big records out there, all the major deadlifts, they're all set with a minimalist style shoe. And most of the big squatters, same thing. So, I'm not going to tell somebody, hey, if you're going to lift more, with those lifters, go do that. But at the same time, if you get that foot and ankle complex stronger outside of that shoe, when you get into it, you're still going to be better. I think spending that time in there is going to be negative just because of the shape of the shoe and the things that has happened. And at the end of the day, it's a Band-Aid. Like, you're not resolving the base issue. Personally, anybody that I have worked with, I've been able to get superior results with changing that shoe. And I'd say the majority of powerlifting out there is all done in that fashion. If you go to strongman, very much, except for like an overhead movement. So it's kind of an overhead press. Those are some things. So Olympic lifting, you're still going to find the lifters, just because those are very sport specific. Just like if you're going to go, watch Usain, run, he's going to have, a cleat shoe. Like, those are sport specific for some unnatural, environments, right? If I'm pushing 500 pounds or 400 pounds overhead, that's not a normal position to have those joints in. And yes, you're probably going to be in a lifter to be able to get in some of those positions to accomplish that. Doesn't mean that they're better for you. They're better for that very unique sport specific application, right?
Yeah, I've always wondered because, like I said, I would say most people who probably just going to the gym in general could benefit, but like, I guess the sport specific, it does make sense. Like you're seeing more people coming out with sports specific barefoot shoes, like the basketball, the X1 that came out with zero. There's like some like barefoot shoe rock climbing shoe too, or cycling shoes. But I guess there's more and more.
I still see a lot more people within those environments that are looking for other solutions or solutions. Like, I have a number of NFL players that like, they follow my methodology in the gym, and they're like going, I'm trying to find a shoe because these are destroying us, what we do on the field, but there's very little, because it's, you've just got decades of people doing a certain thing and there's no resources available, right? Like if you go into the industrial world where I came from with my prior executive background, it's, the work boots, the steel-toed boots, you're not going to find any of them that really work for the shape of the foot. They're this very narrow design that has an issue. And it's just like, try to go to one of those manufacturers to make that change. And it's just like, this is what we make. And so these niche environments that are, stuck in that certain modality, yeah, it kind of sucks because you may not have an option. But for, lifting, general lifting, so not like Olympic lifting or, again, heavy overhead, pressing, those are very kind of unique in, environments. Like your standard back squat, deadlift, basically anything that you're normally doing within the gym, a shoe that allows you to use that foot is going to be better. So we're talking strength training. I mean, this is really fundamental, just so basically stupid to have to explain to people that the foot is just like every other part of your body. If you limit its blood flow and restrict its movement, it's going to have some atrophy and develop weakness. And then what's going to happen if we've got weakness? The body's going to try to shift and compensate around that. It's also going to restrict your movement around that joint to limit its potential for injury. So like your dorsiflexion issue is a foot weakness problem. You're in the clinical side. You probably know that, 98% of all plantar fasciitis cases, if we do imaging, whether it's ultrasound, MRI, or biopsy, are going to show you that it's an underuse issue, that it's atrophy of tissue related to lack of blood flow movement, or atrophy of tissue combined with, breakdown of the ligament and collet structure in the foot. Like when people think of plantar fasciitis as an overuse, like I need to fix this by not using it less. Well, yeah, maybe you do. Like if my elbow hurts because my arm's, weak, I'm going to maybe wrap that, till it like feels a little bit better. But the long-term fix is not to wake up every day and wrap my arm with an elbow wrap when I get out of bed, right? It's to get the arm stronger. And then that's going to resolve a lot of issue. And that's going to deal with my, shoulder problem on the other side, or, that's specific adaptation to imposed demand. I mean, this is the most basic training concept in the world. And I'm getting a little passionate, but I had to argue this stuff like 10 years ago when people were like, what's the science behind this? I'm like, what are you talking about? Like that is exercise science. The very first statement in exercise science, it's right here. Where's your science that the foot is different than the whole rest of the body? Because I can show you, and we can look at any sort of meta-analysis of orthotics and show that it does just like wrapping my elbow would. Have that same example, that it's going to provide a temporary relief for a few week period of time, and long-term is going to provide me no benefit. And it's going to lead to weakness. And what does weakness lead to? Dysfunction and problems. It's not complicated. The more you can actually use that foot in the gym and then make it, which now it's really cool because I'd argue this stuff. And now you can like point to research going, look, wearing a minimalist shoe is as effective as a dedicated foot and ankle strengthening program. Because guess what? You're doing some carries, you're doing some lunges, you're doing some squats, you're doing some and if your foot has to work, it's training. And you don't have to do a separate training program for it. Like it's that fundamental. So yeah. Sorry, I'm getting on my soapbox here, but let's just get to basics, right?
Yeah, no, and that's why I invited you and people who've been doing this longer. Because I myself, I've only been to minimalist shoe for 2 years, but like I've been in that. I was that person who was always constantly injured and thinking, why am I always injured at my ankle, knee, all the time? And so I had to look at my feet. And so like what you kind of pointed out is like, yeah, I was not training my foot. I was not looking down there, which, I mean, technically, from my practitioner side is that when I see people coming in with hip or knee pain, I'm always have to look at where's the source, and so it's the foot or somewhere else. And it's not always the root. I mean, the root causes has to come from somewhere, but we overlook the foot. And I think that's where more and more people are hopefully seeing the importance of just, taking care of the foot and building it strong, making it mobile, make sure that is being taken care of, because that without your foot, man, you're going to be in, like I said, orthotics. You're going to be in so much pain. Shucks. I mean, I can't
Yeah,
imagine so many
it's simple.
people.
I mean, you grab your hand and grab it like this, and you'll see near immediately, the blood flow starts shutting down. Like it's like you can do the same on your foot. Like that restriction, that is going to have an impact, right? Freeing that up.
Hmm.
Now, one of the things that people will point to is like, yeah, well, Vibram said that, and everybody, there was lawsuits because they were actually injuring people. I'm like, well, let's get back to basic training again, right? Your foot is weak. Well, let's say
Uh-huh.
your pecs are weak, or your quads are weak. All right. Well, let's go to the gym, put 225 on and do sets of 50, just starting every day. Like, no, you're going to hurt yourself. You have to build a level of resilience. So you have to approach it like a training program. And so, yeah, they didn't provide that, that education going, hey, ease into it, so runners went, put those on. It's going to be better. And went out and were doing their, 15, 20-mile runs every day and got hurt. Yeah. You put on minimalist shoes and you're sore. Yes, you're sore. All right. Because it's being trained and it's going to be sore, just like going to the gym is going to be sore. Now, this then ties into how do you implement it? Because people want to go, well, what's the strategy? And I just go into it like, take 20% of your week and wear minimalist shoes when you're starting. Right. And then in a few weeks, bump that up a little bit. And people want like the perfect game plan. It's just like training. All right.
Hmm.
Start with that. And if you can tolerate it, then you add more. There's like, hey, you know what? I'm benching 135. It's super easy. We're going to put 155 on, right? Hey, that's a bit much. All right. Well, guess what we're going to do? We're going to back off of that. We're trying to go, you know what? I started at 20%. It was too much. I'm too sore. I can't handle this. Well, guess what? Maybe then it's less, right? It's if you start thinking about it, like flip that switch. It's not some special like thing. Treat this just like you would any other part of your body. So you would develop that resilience over time, right? It's just that same way that we would load anything else, right? You're going to take it a little easy, you're going to add, and you're just going to keep building upon that. I mean, that's it. And you're going to, if it's too much, you're pushing it too hard, back off. If you can push it further, then go ahead and do that. Like it's that simple. So, you could take the 20% and then add 20% every 2 weeks, as a general like guideline for easing into it. But that's what it is. And there's no very direct answer because it is going to vary based on how fast you recover and your base level of resilience or strength to start with, right? Those are all variables.
Switching into the next gear, I wanted to kind of talk about your shoes because they are here made in the US. These are, there's several models that you have. Where do you get your inspiration of creating your shoes? I mean, people who love Chucks, people who love Vans, they could probably see, like, okay,
Yeah.
what's the difference with those from what I'm wearing?
Yep. Yeah, so that's a good question. And a lot of people go, well, like, because powerlifting was known for like Chuck Taylors, like, just like you're saying, wear these. I'm like, no, actually, have you looked at those? Like, just flip the shoe over and put your foot on top of it, and you'll see that it's way too narrow. Like, they're horribly, Vans and Chucks are super narrow, and they're going to be a problem, right? So our shoe specifically, really great wide toe box, has the best sheer gripping force of any minimalist shoe in the market. Maybe there's been some new entries. I don't know. But anytime I've looked, absolute best, which is what you're going to need to do to grip and create that rotational torque that you're wanting to do in any, power-based sport. The goal is to take power, from the floor and transfer it to some distal end. Doesn't matter what it is at the end of the day, whether it's a barbell or a javelin or baseball, and so that is a really important thing, is having that sheer force, again, the ability to have that rotational piece of it. And then, yes, so from a style standpoint, we did go with that very kind of classic look. So I did make a joke up front, and I'll make another joke now, going, hey, all the minimalist shoes out there are designed for hippies and runners. And, hey, what's that's always a good one. I'm sorry. I just, I hope people take this tongue in cheek, that it's meant to be. But we wanted to have something that fit a different, aesthetic and, culture and vibe. Right. And so it was function first meets a touch of fashion. But we wanted a shoe that had some classic styling, a boot that had some classic styling. So we actually partnered with a gentleman named George Esquivel, who's arguably the best men's fashion shoe designer in the world. So he does, the shoes for Tommy Hilfiger. He does like all these rock stars and movie stars, the one-off boots that you see on, The Rock or LeBron or so on, like those are his. But if you look at those, you'll see that same styling in our boot, right? Sure, it's not the one-off pair that costs $15,000, right? But we've got that same aesthetic. So it is meant, to work it for everyone else that doesn't fit within, all the same minimalist companies are marketing to the same exact audience, right? And so there's no one outside of that. So we've taken a different approach. Yes, we use natural materials instead of synthetics. It's just shifting that perspective. And personally, I don't think that there's anything better than leather and suede for shoes. Like, it's absolutely phenomenal for being able to keep you warm in the cold and also be breathable. And when it's hot, not like it's just this, it's a really great material. But, now that we're getting into the other kind of health and environmental arguments, I could really go, we're the best. We're the most hippie company out there, actually, if you want to make sure you're not getting microplastics and you're actually the best for the environment and, like all these things, right? So, so we could argue it the other way entirely, but yeah, I think we stand in pretty distinct contrast to the rest of the companies in the market. And I think that's good. Like, we need to be servicing, everybody needs to have access to footwear that respects the foot, right? And so that's the goal. And so the shoes are not made in the USA. Most of the hides for the suede and all that have come from the US for a long time. But the boots, we were working with a boot maker. We had a factory for some of the higher volume in Mexico for a long time. Again, all the leathers from the US, and then a family factory in Mexico. We've actually insourced that this year. So this July, we fired up our own production line in North Dakota. So we're hand making these boots there. So this is the only minimalist boot company made in the United States, and certainly the only handmade minimalist boot in the United States. Like, that is really cool. And our quality and design on our boots is bar none. You will not find something better than what we're doing. They're absolutely phenomenal. And, that's for the future for us. We're getting this tooled up and going, but our ability to be able to have, more customized options, like different leather choices, colors, and just, we just did an insulated one for the winter, like being able to have some more flexibility with controlling that production and the lot size versus, hey, we need to do, X thousands of, whatever, and stock those. Like, we can really tailor that in. So I'm super excited about that. We still have, our classic line, which has the, in the shoes, the version 1, which has no wrap on the sole. They're absolutely just tremendous for comfort and feel and movement. And then we've added the one sitting in front of you, which just the styling is just like, that's my go-to. Yep, right there. I just slip those on every day, and it's amazing. It's amazing. I don't know what else to say. I truly believe we've got the best product in its category, bar none.
Yeah, especially it's helped me for sure wear these compared to like those synthetic materials, because those are typically not what everyone should be wearing, synthetic materials, polyester and all that.
It's becoming more and more, people are becoming more and more aware of that.
Unfortunately, these are, I would say, the most cleanest and of course functional for sure. Just doing my simple lifts, And one thing I want to point out is that for people who are looking to like minimalist shoes, is that definitely the toe box is wide enough for myself, because I know there are some that are, say, quote unquote anatomical, but still, like you're kind of mentioning, taking out the insoles, putting on my feet. These have that toe box that I need for myself, rather than other companies who say they're barefoot shoes or wide toe box. They don't have that, but this one definitely is one of the wider toe box
and
for
there's
myself.
the issue, because if you look at the standard foot, it's a foot that's been in shoes their whole life. And as you've been in this 2 years now, your foot is going to start changing shape, and it's going to be wider than what you actually think it is. And so if we're designing shoes to fit feet that have already been formed, like you've got to take it a step further and actually go to what is the foot supposed to be shaped like, and respect that, and know that we're going to do the work to get there, because it's very different. And that's an argument people often, when I'm having this conversation, like, oh, it's just because people aren't fitting their shoes right. And I'm like, no, it's far beyond that.
So what are some of the aspects that you're really proud of, as far as, I know you probably didn't mention a lot as far as, shoes with the grip that you have, but what goes into creating shoes such as yours? I mean, does it take pretty while to make from beginning creation to actually have it in?
Yes, because we design our shoes from the ground up. And there's a lot of folks out there that will, like I said, I was joking about that one company importing some water shoes or things like that. Oh, we've got these unique colors and patterns and whatever. And it's like, okay, Alibaba master, I get that. Designing a shoe from the ground up takes a lot. And it's a slow process. You've got to invest every single size. You've got to build I had the shoe last. I had a sample shoe last around here. I'm not sure where it's at, but it basically, you've got to create a last that, fits that shoe. And so here's the problem. And this is why, again, a lot of those other shoes continue to still be too narrow, is the investment to design a last. You have to have a last designer, which usually these are multi-generational folks. Okay. And so what a lot of people are doing is reverse designing. So they'll just use an existing shoe and then build something to that. And then the shoe's built around that. I can tell you for a fact, I know, because we deal with the factories, and I've dealt with, again, because of our connections through, I talked about the design partners that we've used. It's some of those biggest name brands, ones that are funded with families that have been in shoes for hundreds of years, are using like knockoffs of lasts, like they're just copies, and it's reverse engineered stuff. And I know that for a fact, because we've looked at that with professional last designers, and it just, that blows me away. Like, let alone some of them claiming where they're manufactured, and it's not true either, but that's a whole another game. So a lot goes, I mean, that's a lot, it's $3,000 to $5,000 per last. And then you go, okay, I've got a 6, a 6.5, a 7, 7.5, like all the way through. Right. And then it's like, oh, now we've got a new series of shoes. Or one way we have kept is like, we've built our lasts, and now because we're sourcing in both, US and overseas multi-factories, we'll have to have 2 sets of lasts, but we would be able to build the boot and the shoe on the same last, because we're using that same form, and that's been able to have some cost. And so, on occasion, somebody will go, hey, your new shoe has a different size than the old one. And it's like, no, it doesn't. Like, they're built on the exact same thing, but you may have a difference in the material, like, right? So suede is going to have a little bit of flexibility to it. It's going to conform in, where, our canvas is going to have, less rigidity to that. And just understanding, okay, it's not just that, but like, let's take suede. Well, it stretches in one direction better than the other. So how does that lay, on there? So just learning all this stuff takes a long time in that process. But I'm really proud of our material selection, the grip, the looks, like things like, even, we've switched the insoles. Did you notice the insoles in those? Like,
yes.
A lot of insoles are going to create, they're just going to wear through super fast. They're going to absorb smells. So, we've got the suede insole in those as well. So it's just a great experience. Like, when you put your shoes on, it should not be that sigh of relief at the end of the day. I can't wait to get those off, but almost the reverse. Like, these are so comfy. Just feels like my slippers that I put on. That, like, I think tells in our repeat customer base. Like, it's one thing, we don't have the resources that a lot of these large companies have, or people that go to private equity have, to be able to, push the marketing end and run ads and do all of that side of it. But the people that have the experience, and then sharing that with their families. And so now, and that's like, my partners are at that phase of life. My kids are a bit older now. So my oldest is going to be graduating high school here shortly, but my partners are a little bit younger. They've got the young kids, and being able to have, like, these amazing kids shoes that actually are so easy. Because if you've ever had kids and dealing with shoes and getting them on, and like it can be a chore, and being able to have something that early on actually respects the foot and is going to help them longer in life, not deal with back, hip, knee, like other issues that develop as a result of this, but also just make it easy as a parent to be able to like manage a kid that maybe doesn't want to be managed at that point in time.
You're kind of headed towards that direction as far as like where your company and where your growth is happening. Because I know since you started the Barefoot boots, what other things are you guys looking to do to expand and to grow your brand moving on?
Yeah, those are the two growth areas right now. Is the Barefoot Cub product. We think that has tons of, well, one, we just care. Like that is just anybody that's been a parent and dealt with trying to find shoes and the frequency that you have to deal with shoe replacements and all of that. It's having a really great product there is a game changer. And then on the boot line, it's just going further into this kind of creating a really premium product at a price point that can't be beat. So yeah, it's not a $100 boot or $150 boot, but it's something that's comparable that other people may be spending $1,000 plus on, and being able to have that and really dive deeper and being able to kind of customize and refine that. I hope someday that we have the resources to go after the safety side of the market. And so that is something that we've been exploring for years. That's the area that we get questioned the most, is like, when are you going to have a steel safety toe?
Yeah.
And we think about footwear as a tool, right? So it's like, obviously with that, you're not going to be able to have all the characteristics of a minimalist shoe, but it's like having the right tool for the right job. You want to be able to do that with the least amount of compromise possible, right? And I think that it's just terrible, like thinking about people that have to work with the products that are in that market, in an industrial setting or military or whatever for decades, and the impact that has on their body. I mean, it can be really devastating for some folks, and being able to have something that allows for some, for some respect of the foot in that environment is going to be a huge game changer for people's quality of life and health. And so we're really passionate about that and hoping to explore that, but that's a pretty significant investment, and there's some hurdles to get through with some of the approvals in that industry, as well as just the marketing side of it, because it's like a lot of those are delivered you've got regional trucks that drive around to these facilities, and like, how do you market to that environment? Because we don't have the margins and we don't build that in, like, for being able to have, a middleman, a store, any of that. We're trying to get the best quality product that we can at a good price to the customer. Right. And so we don't have those massive things built in to be able to afford, celebrity endorsements and, tons of affiliates and all that sort of stuff. And I hope that people see that and appreciate that, because at the same time, you could argue, hey, that stuff is priced high compared to X. X is producing, buying in lots of 50,000, like doing, what it takes to run a brand like this. Your costs are going to be higher, right? And that's one area that we can certainly compete, though, is the premium side of that. And that's what we're focusing on in the boots. So where we can really deliver on that.
Where do you see the barefoot shoe industry evolving in the future? Because how long has your brand, Barefoot Shoes, been around? Since when's the inception?
I think we started in 2018.
Okay. So since 2018, you've seen, it's been 7 years now, but where do you see it evolving? Do you think there'll be more awareness of people getting into minimalist shoes? Do you think there'll be like, more, I don't know, conceptual idealization, or people are just different technology? Where's your idea as far as where the evolution of barefoot shoes come in?
Yeah. So it's certainly changed a lot from me having to even explain it to begin with, to like people understanding the need for it. Like it's really changed a significant amount. But for the gen population, I think that there's still a lot of growth, but we can see things like, I think Nike just released a minimalist shoe, right? And so I think that we're going to end up with minimalist shoes being readily available in the general public being aware of these because the big brands are going to dive in. But that's also, I think, going to end up stifling some of the innovation and things that need to happen in this market because you're going to have those big players and it's hard to steer that big ship and get that refined. I mean, that's why we have shoes designed the way that they are now. And so it does concern me. We certainly had an explosion in number of brands in the space. I know that's certainly made it a lot more competitive, and a number of these I'm not too impressed with. And I think that they'll end up falling by the wayside at some point as well. So I think we're going to continue to see growth in this market. I'm not sure that all of it is going to be good. And it's going to make it challenging for some of the players that have been around. But I think the ones that are, able to keep, that have been here and have been successful in servicing the customer are going to continue to do well and grow.
Awesome. Any closing thoughts that you have as far as what people should do if they are looking into switching into minimal shoes? Give me your 5 takes of what people should do working from the ground up so that they can get into minimal shoes, work on the foot health. Give me 5 tips that you recommend to people.
Yeah. So first one is actually when you're sizing them, I said flip the shoe over, but that doesn't give you a real good representation. So pull the insole out and step on that insole, right? Or, take your foot and trace that on, a piece of paper. Then it's also taking a look at your foot and understanding that it's actually not sized on length or width. The shoe fits on what's on your girth. So it's about the middle of the arch.
Okay.
That circumference right there is really the driver and where the shoe fits. So just being aware of those couple things. So one, making sure it's wide enough so that your toes can fit in there. And maybe if you're new to shoes, realizing that they might spread a little bit more. The other is easing into that progressive overload. So don't go all at once. It's going to be a little sore to, you might be a little sore to start with. So ease into that. And, style is very unique and personal. So I could sit here and, say how much I love my Barefoot and the brand. And I think we've got the best aesthetics and this best product out there. But, I understand the uniquenesses of everybody's, tastes and things of that nature. So, my jokes earlier were tongue in cheek and just kind of to draw some distinction, but try to find something that fits your unique style. I think doing some understanding on materials and sourcing would be good. There is a lot of really cheap repurposed product out there. And if you're using the shoe and you're strengthening the foot, you're doing work, you're exercising. It's going to take some wear, and make sure that you've got a quality product that's not going to break down, that your foot's not going to start moving inside the shoe. That is a big miss I think that people have, is allowing, they get that great shoe, but then their foot is sliding all around inside of that shoe. That's where the insoles can come in really important. I do want to Blue Maca brand insoles, which I believe we sell too, but it's super environmentally friendly. And if you're going to change something out, so there's no virgin material used in the creation of these products, by the way, but it's just like having your foot glued inside. So for the athlete side, you grab our Barefoot shoe and those, and you are just phenomenal connection and feel to the ground. And that's what you should be looking for. Put that shoe on, do some movement and feel do I feel rooted? Do I feel grounded and connected? Right. So do some twists and movement. And that's where you're going to see that as well. Because if you don't have, again, that grip quality, your foot is rolling inside the shoe, things of that nature, you're not going to be fixing the problem.
Awesome, man. Well, hey, I appreciate you hopping onto the podcast and really sharing your insights, your passion, and of course, your story of how you got into this. Love for the audience so they can learn more about what you're doing and how they can purchase. So what are some ways that they can learn, connect, and find out more about what you're doing? So if you want to share your email, social, website, and then any ways that they can connect with you.
Yes, absolutely. So obviously there's Barefoot Direct, BEAR, and directly after that, Foot, FOOT. But for me, you can usually find me under Mad Scientist Duffin. That's like muffin, but with a Duffin. Or you can just type in Chris Duffin and you can find all things me. If you go to chrisduffin.com, there will be links to Barefoot on that. And there'll be links to my book and all those sorts of things. So Chris Duffin, like muffin, but with a D. You can find me on LinkedIn. I'm starting to produce long form YouTube content again, but I should be pretty damn easy to find. I've been around for a while and fairly well known for what I'm doing. So you just type it into the old Google and you'll be able to figure it out, or type my name into social media and I'll probably pretty well pop up. YouTube, Instagram, LinkedIn. Those are some good places. On Facebook too. ChrisDuffin.com is links to all things Chris Duffin. So my supplement company, my ebooks, it's all there.
Sounds good, man. Well, hey, thank you so much once again, hopping on the podcast and of course, showcasing your knowledge and the barefoot space. But thank you so much.
All right. You have a good one, man.
All right. Thanks, Chris.